Hello everyone, I'm having a much faster turnaround on making these videos this time. I was not happy with taking something like 4 weeks or a month or whatever it was between my first review and my second review. I'm much more happy that it's been about a week and I'm recording again. I'm much more satisfied with that. This week we're going to be taking a look at an Australian death metal band called Mortification. What genres of music, or heavy metal even, do you think of when you think Christian metal? What springs instantly to mind? I'm going to guess the furthest thing from everybody's mind are two genres in particular, those being death metal and black metal. Well, today we're going to take a look at a Christian death metal band, Mortification, as I mentioned earlier. Mortification formed in 1990 after Stephen Rowe decided that he wanted to take his music career in a different direction. Prior to this, he had been in a group called Light Force from 1985 to 1990. They dissolved and reformed as Mortification. Light Force was a Christian power metal band. For those of you who know who Mortification is but do not know Light Force, you might be going, ooh, Stephen Rowe has something before Break the Curse? But take my word for it, Light Force is very, very cheesy and not really worth your time. Stephen Rowe and his band and his music got much, much better in 1990 when they became Mortification. Before Mortification, Light Force did have 2 albums. They released Battle Zone in 1987 and Mystical Thieves in 1988. So if you're looking for some pre-Mortification Stephen Rowe, if you want to hear it despite what I said about it earlier, that's where to look. I guess Stephen Rowe was dissatisfied with the power metal that they were making and wanted to make something drastically different. Something much heavier, much more brutal, a whole lot more aggressive, and in general, a lot more bad. So in 1990, he dissolved Light Force and kick-started Mortification. For those of you thinking that I'm going to wind up being that guy that only reviews Christian metal, I would like to point out my Assassin review was a secular band, and I will do a whole lot more of that in the future. I just think that there are Christian metal bands that deserve your attention. Mortification and Believer are a couple. Mortification did release a demo in 1990 called Break the Curse. They remastered this demo in 1994 and released it as a full album. I believe that would have made it their 4th album. A year later, Mortification came back with their first full-length album, their self-titled album, and the album that we will be taking a look at today. 4 songs from Mortification's demo made it onto this album. Those 4 songs are Brutal Warfare, Turn, Break the Cursed, and Majestic Infiltration of the Order. My copy of the album actually came in a 2-pack with Mortification's second album, Scrolls of the Megaloth. Unfortunately, my copy of the album does not have a booklet that contains all the lyrics for the 2 different albums or anything else. It just contains a brief paragraph describing the history of the band and who they are and what they do. This album does dip into the realm of grindcore on 2 separate tracks. We will get to that when we start talking about the individual tracks on the album. Stephen Rowe's vocal style on this album is something of a mid-range growl, which actually turns out to work better for this particular brand of death metal because the band did not tune quite as low as is frequently the norm within the genre. Lyrically, there really isn't that much to talk about. All these songs are a mix of what you would expect from death metal theme-wise with a Christian point of view for it all. For example, there's a song called Bathed in Blood. That sounds very death metal to me. I'm sure it sounds very death metal to you. What it's actually about, though, is the blood of Jesus cleansing people's souls. And there's another song called Brutal Warfare. Again, this sounds very death metal, but it is about going to war against Satan's forces. The first track is called Until the End, and it starts off with a fairly basic riff that serves as an intro to the album as a whole, which is followed about 30 seconds in by the main riff of the song. The lyrics don't even kick in until almost a minute in. If you listen to a lot of metal, you're probably used to that kind of thing, though. About halfway through the song, it breaks down, and then it starts off with a slow, chugging riff that builds back up to full speed. This song does have a guitar solo that is as fast and as ripping as you would expect for a song of this speed. Having said that, that guitar solo is rather short. The second track on the album is called Brutal Warfare, and in my opinion is one of the heaviest songs on the album. It uses blast beats and double bass to really drive home how fast and heavy this song really is. Somewhere in the middle of the song there's a small bass interlude that you would expect this kind of thing, since the singer and primary songwriter Stephen Rowe is also the bassist. After this little bass interlude, Stephen Rowe delivers some of the best vocal work on the album. The fourth track is called Bathed in Blood. It starts off with a simple intro riff that has some of the best drum fills on the album. Look out for the drumming on this album, as it tends to be pretty darn good. For the first minute and a half of this song, it is just gradually building up more and more and more, and becoming much more aggressive and much more ferocious and much more badass in general. This song contains some of the best double bass work on the entire album. It also features a guitar solo that, much like the intro to this song, starts off kind of slow and builds speed the longer it goes on. The fourth track on the album is called Satan's Doom. Clocking in at over 6 minutes in length, this is the longest song on the album. There are parts in this song and certain riffs that are slower than most of the rest of this album. They almost come across as doom metal rather than death metal. So maybe you should call this particular song Death Doom, perhaps? Overall, this is probably the slowest song on the album, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. At least I don't think it's a bad thing. This song doesn't even get fast at all until about 3 minutes in. It's halfway through the song. At one point the song arrives at what one would think is a logical conclusion for a song, but it does not end. It stops and picks right back up and kicks back into high gear. If you would like to say that this album has an epic song, it is this one. And it is a good one. Remember when I said earlier that this album dips into grindcore on 2 separate occasions? Well, the fifth song, Turn, happens to be the first of those 2 occasions. Clocking in at just over 30 seconds in length, this is the shortest song on the album. This album features very, very fast riffing, a lot of blast beats, and Stephen Rowe spitting out lyrics as quickly as he can over all of that. By no coincidence, I am certain, the 6th song on this album, the one following Turn, is called No Return. The intro to this song is what appears to be a demon talking backwards. At least that's what it comes across as to me. Following closely on the heels of the previous song Turn, this is another one of the fastest songs on the album. It really turns up the brutality and aggression that Stephen Rowe and company bring forth for this early death metal album. The 7th song on this album is also the title track for their demo. This is a re-recording of Break the Curse. This song starts off with a bass intro. You would think that this band would have more of that, given that the creative driving force behind this band is Stephen Rowe, and he's the bassist. There are parts of this song that come across as punk instead of metal. It is possible that Stephen Rowe may have been influenced by something like crust punk, possibly Doom, the band, maybe? This song, however, will return to the death metal roots of Mortification before it is all said and done. The entire thing does not come across as punk or crust punk. There are 2 solos in this song that are maybe a minute in that sound almost identical to each other. Maybe there's 1 or 2 notes that are different, all total. Listen closely to the drumming on this album, as it uses a good mix of cymbals in with all the blast. The 8th track on this album is called New Awakening. Clocking in at over 5 minutes in length, this is the 2nd longest song on the album. It is also the only other song on the album to crack 5 minutes or more. This song mixes speeds quite a bit more than most of the rest of this album does. Maybe Satan's Doom mixes speeds more than this one does, but it's probably the only song on the album that does. This track might have the longest guitar solo on the entire album. It certainly has the most memorable guitar solo on the entire album. So keep an eye out for that when you're listening to this track. The 9th song on this album is entitled The Destroyer Beholds. It starts off with a very brief drum intro. This particular track does contain some of the better drum work on the entire album. The riffing during the verses on this song is actually a bit slower than most of the rest of the album. The song speeds up and uses stop-and-go chugging riffing during the chorus when Stephen goes, "The Destroyer Behold." This song also has a couple of very fast and ripping guitar solos in it. I just realized that I haven't been holding up my copy of it this entire time. Oops. Oh well, what can you do? The 10th song on this album is called Journey of Reconciliation. It starts off slower and builds up speed and ferocity as Stephen Rowe sings over it. When it goes up to full speed, it does so with a lot of blast beats. It's interesting to note that this particular song does not have a chorus at all. The last track on this album is called Majestic Infiltration of the Order. I said earlier that this album dips into grindcore 2 times. This final track is the 2nd time. I swear it takes longer to say the name of the song than it does to actually listen to it. Nah, I'm kidding. It's about a minute long. The only lyrics in this song are Stephen Rowe repeating the phrase, "God rules," over and over again. Even though this song is only a minute long, or just over a minute, it managed to contain 2 guitar solos. Not 1, but 2. This might actually be the fastest song on the album. It is difficult to say one way or the other. The band did do a music video for this particular track. In that music video, they attempted to convey the band's sense of humor, and the video itself is well worth a watch. Look it up if you get the chance. While I don't think that this album contains one single bad track, I like it from beginning to end, there is something that I do have to nitpick about it, and that is the production. The low end on this particular album is not very loud at all. You would think that would be different given that the singer is also the bassist, but that is not the case, at least not on this album. It's mostly mid and high end. In my opinion, this kind of creates an audio imbalance in how it sounds. That does not mean that you should not give this album a listen. It is very, very good. In my opinion, this album does deserve to be hailed as a death metal classic, and it is a very good start for the band that shows a lot of promise for the future. Promise that would fully be delivered on their 2nd album, Scrolls of the Megaloth. As good as this album is, that one is much, much better, reaching the upper echelons of death metal as it sits among some of the greatest albums in the genre's entire history. But you should definitely have both of them in your collection. If you like albums like Scream Bloody Gore by Death, Left Hand Path by Entombed, or Season of the Dead by Necrophagia, definitely at least give this one a listen. You may be surprised at how good it is. Hey, I've done 2 of these album reviews before. The first one was on the upcoming Terror by the German thrash metal band Assassin, and the second one was on the album Sanity Obscure by the Pennsylvania thrash metal band Believer. Click here to watch my review of the upcoming Terror by Assassin, and click here to watch my review of Sanity Obscure by Believer. Thank you everybody for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. I would greatly appreciate that. It would help me out a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.